Yaskawa.
Hi, I'm Steven Peterson. I'm one of the product training engineers here at Yaskawa America Incorporated. In this e-learning module, we will be discussing Yaskawa's DriveWizard Industrial software. DriveWizard Industrial is Yaskawa's free, that's right, I said it, free, support tool. DriveWizard Industrial is a Windows-based software tool designed to make commissioning and troubleshooting of Yaskawa drives as simple as possible. DriveWizard Industrial provides user-friendly tools for viewing, manipulating, and exchanging data with the drive. Data can be retrieved, changed, stored, and graphed. We will go over all of these features and also provide some tips and tricks to make you look like a pro. So first things first, if you don't already have DriveWizard Industrial, be sure to download it off of our website. Just type in yaskawa.com, and then in the top right there's a search box. You're going to type in DriveWizard Industrial, and then click Enter. Once you do that, you're going to want to click the first link, and that's going to take you to the DriveWizard Industrial page where you can download the software. DriveWizard Industrial is compatible with the A1000, the P1000, the V1000, the V1004X, J1000, F7, P7, G7, and G5, so pretty much every Yaskawa industrial drive. There's a huge amount of features in DriveWizard Industrial, so with that in mind, the video you are currently viewing is just a short overview, simply touching on the topics that will be discussed further in detail in other videos. For more information on these topics, and for some very helpful tips and tricks, just click the pop-up annotation in YouTube to be directed to that video. If you are not watching this on YouTube, just take note of the module's title, and you can search that title right on our website. We're going to start out with the basics. So this includes coverage of the system requirements necessary to run DriveWizard, and also some tips on installation. Also, the various connection methods will also be demonstrated, including some tricks for the driver installation for the different connection types. In section 2, we will be explaining everything there is to programming with DriveWizard Industrial. So we're going to start out with reading and writing operations, leading into various exporting and sharing options. Additionally, you will learn the best way to transmit vital parameters and monitors right to Yaskawa's technical support group. When it comes to monitoring, section 3 is where it's at. This section touches on how to access monitors, use custom displays, check statuses, and also covers various tricks for trending data. Did you know that DriveWizard Industrial can also control the drive right from your PC? Section 4 will explain when and how to utilize this tool and also demonstrate the different stopping methods when you're in this control method. An important concept to understand is that DriveWizard Industrial operates alongside of a database. So this means that parameters listed in the program are pulled from the installed databases. This is going to depend on the drive's firmware. This will be discussed in further detail in section 5. There are some pretty powerful tools within DriveWizard Industrial. The application wizard makes setup foolproof. Also, that once tedious task of jumping from an older VFD generation to the newest generation will prove to be not so tedious anymore once you get an understanding of the Convert project tool. DriveWizard Industrial's help menu is actually helpful for once. The final section will show how to navigate through this robust help menu. There's a lot of customization that can be also done within this menu. Lastly, the software update feature is going to be discussed. This video shows the system requirements, installation, and connection methods for DriveWizard Industrial. There will also be some practical tips and tricks thrown into the mix regarding these topics. Despite DriveWizard Industrial being a very powerful support tool, it doesn't require very much as far as system requirements to run. One of the biggest requirements that you'll need to keep in mind is that the laptop or desktop that you're installing DriveWizard Industrial on must be running Windows XP or higher. That means no Mac operating system, and also you don't want to try installing this on your old Commodore 64. You will notice the rest of the requirements are minimal, such as 512 megabytes or 1 gigabyte of RAM, depending on your operating system, You also only need 100 megabytes of hard drive space, and common sense devices like a mouse or a trackpad and a monitor for displaying the actual software is of course needed. Installation is pretty simple and straightforward. However, if you ever do run into any issues during installation, try installing the software as an administrator. This should resolve most installation problems. You can also try installing DriveWizard Industrial using XP mode in Windows. This is sort of a last-ditch effort if you have recurring installation issues. It is not very common that you have to use this troubleshooting method. Once the program is installed, open it and select the Drive Selection button. A window that looks like this will open up, and this will display the different connection methods that are available. Let's start with the USB connection. Both the A and P1000 drives have a USB port built right into the control board. Any standard type A to B USB cable will work, and it will interface right to DriveWizard Industrial. Most people think of USB as always being a plug-and-play type of connection. The trick is that you do need to install the Yaskawa USB driver to properly connect to a drive. The driver itself, though, is actually located in the DriveWizard Industrial folder. All you need to do is tell Windows where to locate it and then install it. To manually install the USB driver, first physically connect to the drive. Then, open up Device Manager on your computer. One way to get there is to right-click on My Computer and then click on Manage. Once this box opens up, click Device Manager on the left pane and then locate the drive. It is usually under Other Devices and named Cosmos Series Inverter. See that little yellow warning symbol there? That means that the driver is not installed. So what you're going to have to do is right-click the device and then click Update Driver Software. Browse your computer for the driver and point Windows to this folder for 64-bit operating systems. And for 32-bit operating systems, the driver location is slightly different. Just knock out that x86 and then you're on your way. Once you click Next, it may take up to a couple of minutes until a window pops up asking if you would like to install this device software. Of course, you're going to click Yes and let the process finish from there. Here's something that's constantly overlooked. Windows can sometimes drag while it is running its automatic search for a proper driver. While it is running this search, you will not be able to manually install the driver. So what you will have to do is make sure that Windows has finished its search attempt before trying to install the driver. You can tell if Windows is currently searching by checking the taskbar. Once the driver is set up, you can connect to your drive. When you are connected via USB, you will get a green check mark next to the USB connection option. It is also good practice to use the test button to verify communication is there. The information on the left side of the box, drive series, version, model number, and control method, are at default values until you go online with the drive, or you could just hit the scan button. The scan drive button will automatically populate this information with which drive you are currently connected to. So even if, for example, you think you have an F7 drive and you select it from the drop-down menu, DriveWizard Industrial will automatically correct your selection to match the detected drive. Now, before we connect with USB, let's go over the other connection methods which are available. Another popular connection uses serial connection. The serial cable consists of a DB9 connector on one side and an RJ45 type connection on the other. This cable can be purchased from Yaskawa using part number UWR 00468-2, or it can be made since we have the drawing available online. Since most newer PCs do not have a serial connection, a third-party USB to serial adapter is commonly used. The driver for this adapter must also be installed. The procedure is very similar to the direct USB cable driver, but it uses the manufacturer of the adapter's driver instead. When connecting the serial cable, you must remove the keypad to access the RJ45 port. Connect the other end of your adapter, which is connected to your PC or directly to a serial port. When using a serial cable, you must tell DriveWizard Industrial which communication port you are currently connected to. To determine this, you're going to have to go back into the device manager. Once you locate the proper port, you want to go to the Communication Setup tab and use the drop-down menu to select the correct port number. If you do not want to use the device manager, you can always take the long road by trying each port individually and scanning for the drive each time until it works. To save time in the future, when using a serial cable, you can just place a small label right above the port you plan on using. This way, you always plug into the same port and you always know what the number is of that port. Another connection option available is Ethernet. This is going to require an option card to be installed onto the drive. For the 1000 series inverters, you could use an SI-EN3 or an Ethernet IP card, an SI-EM3 or a Modbus TCP IP card, or lastly an SI-EP3 Profinet option card. As for the 7th generation drives, a CM090 or a CM092 option card is required. By selecting the Ethernet radio button and clicking on the default IP address, you will find the network configurator on the lower right. This will list all Yaskawa drives currently connected to the network. This is great if you do not know which the current IP address is on a drive. Be sure to note the transfer button. The transfer button transfers the IP address of the selected drive directly to the IP address section. This is going to save time by eliminating the need to manually type in the IP address. Once you scan the network to list the online drives, you can directly change the IP addresses right in the configurator. Just type in the new address and click Update. The Update button saves the changes, and the drive's network card will then automatically reboot. Then wait a few seconds, because we need to wait for the device to boot up before attempting to access it again. The final connection option for DriveWizard Industrial is the Y-Stick. The Y-Stick allows the drive to connect to the USB port on a PC. It can also read, copy, and verify drive parameter settings from one drive to another. If the Y-Stick is used, it is necessary to install a driver from Yaskawa. The driver installation procedure is the same as that of the USB Type A to B cable. The difference is in the driver itself. The driver is available on Yaskawa.com, and it is named SP1824_001. You'll need to tell DriveWizard Industrial that are using a Y-Stick by selecting the proper radio button at the Communication Setup window. This video shows how to read and write parameters in DriveWizard Industrial. We are also going to cover how to share and export these parameters. Let's start out by first explaining the differences between going online with the drive and working offline. If you are currently connected to a drive and you would like to read parameters, then you will want to click the Connect to Drive/Go Online button. If you are not connected to a drive, you are going to get a communication error if you click this button. A nice feature in DriveWizard, though, is that you can just click the Select Drive and Work Offline button. The purpose of this button is so that you can make project files and configure all of the parameters for a drive right at your desk without physically connecting to it. An important item to note is that you will want to select the proper drive series, software version, and model number from the drop-down menus. These selections should match the drive that you plan on eventually writing the parameters to. Alternatively, if we are connected to a drive, the online mode will automatically determine which drive you are connected to. Select which connection method you are using and proceed to click the Go Online button. After a few status bars rush in front of you, a window will pop up asking you what you want to do. Click the View/Edit Drive Parameters icon. This icon is a shortcut that's going to take us to the parameter list. If you haven't noticed already, drives tend to have a lot of parameters. So to find out what you are looking for quickly, here's some pointers. To the left of the parameter list, there is a pane which categorizes the parameters into groups. If you click on the C tuning, for example, only the C parameters will be listed on the parameter list. You can break it down even further by clicking the little arrow to the left of the C to list the subgroups. If we just care about XL and decel parameters, for example, we can just click on the group, and now our parameter list is much more manageable and easier to read. Another method to find what you're looking for quickly is to simply search it. On the bottom of the parameter list is an active search box. Just type in the parameter description you are looking for, and the parameter list will then dwindle down in size to match your search criteria. To change a parameter, just double-click it. This will bring up a window listing the parameter description, the setting, and also the allowable range. Either type or select the desired value you want, and then select Write to Drive and Save Working Value. A quick status bar is going to pop up that's going to say it's writing, and the window will then close. You also have the ability to change a parameter back to the factory default value by clicking on the default icon. This method of changing a single parameter at a time is often favorable because it is faster due to less messages being sent to the drive. If a parameter is different from the factory default, then that setting is going to become highlighted in red. To look at all of the parameters that have been modified, use the Modified Parameters tree on the left window pane. If you want to clear out the whole drive and start from scratch, the best way to do that is select the Restore to Default function, which is under the Edit tab. If you ever want to initialize for 3-wire, for example, then you're going to use the Initialize Drive function. Here you could select 2-wire or 3-wire. If you select 3330, that'll initialize you to 3-wire control, and you will lose all of your programming, so be careful with these two functions. If an entire project file was set up in the offline mode, it can be written by opening the project file, and then writing the project file to the connected drive. Be aware that when writing entire project files to a drive, that there are KVA dependencies, meaning that the drive you plan on writing the parameters to must be the same size of the drive that was selected when the project file was first created. In addition to understanding the importance of drive capacities and KVA dependencies, there is also something to note about changing control methods. When you change your control method, like V by F versus open loop or closed loop vector, you will get a pop-up message explaining that since the control method is being changed, there are a handful of other parameters that will change with it. This will usually include parameters like torque compensation, volts per hertz patterns, and also various gains. Once you click Accept, the control method changes along with those additional parameters which were listed. DriveWizard Industrial also has a compare function. The compare function will check to see if the parameters in DriveWizard Industrial, also called the working values, match the current drive settings. After running a compare, you will get either a pop-up window explaining that everything matches, or if the parameters do not match, then they will be highlighted in yellow. To sync DriveWizard Industrial with the drive, just click Read Parameters. Once you click this, all of that yellow will disappear because the working values now match the drive settings. Notice that at the top of the parameter list, there's an Export tab and also an Email tab. The Export tab will allow you to export your parameters into a number of different formats. This includes PDF files, Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, or even images. Also, with that Email tab, you could email parameters directly from DriveWizard Industrial to coworkers, colleagues, or even tech support. If you create an email and send it to tech support, you'll want to send them the modified constants list instead of the entire parameter list. Also, you'll want to be sure to include the fault trace, which we're going to talk about next, and also be ready to give them the drive serial number. If you need support, send all of that information to drivesupport@yaskawa.com. And of course, you'll need a working internet connection to send off that email. This video shows how to use DriveWizard Industrial to access and display important monitors, statuses, as well as data trending. All monitors can be viewed by clicking the monitor tree on the left pane at the parameter list. These monitors are all updated live, so if terminal S1, for example, on the drive were to close, the status listed will update accordingly. If you are looking for something a bit easier on the eyes, try throwing up some monitors on the monitor panel. Click the Startup and Diagnostics tab and select Monitor Panel. Once in the monitor panel, first select the monitors you want to view. You could also scale the gauge if you need to. Additionally, there's a few different types of displays you can select from, such as a sliding scale, a trender, or an LED type display. Once you're ready to start monitoring, click the Start icon. Monitoring is done in real time. As far as troubleshooting, it may be helpful to utilize the Status and Fault History tool. Similar to the monitors tree in the parameters list, this window will display live statuses as well as specific selectable monitors. Fault History, which is the drive's 10 most recent faults, are listed on the second tab, while Fault Trace monitors are conveniently listed on the next tab. Just like the monitor panel, you will need to click the Start icon to start using this tool. Be sure to use the Update button to get the latest information from the drive if you are continuously monitoring fault history or fault trace monitors. DriveWizard Industrial also features a trender. The trender can be used to monitor up to 6 monitors on a trending graph. Start by opening the trender. Select the desired monitors, and then click the Start icon. The displayed time range can be adjusted via a drop-down menu on the right side. Scaling for each monitor can also be customized. You'll need to make sure the trender is stopped before you try customizing or scaling your monitors. Check the Custom Scaling box, and then just type in the new value. The trend recorder can be set up to start when a signal level rises above or below a pre-programmed level. This is using the trigger function. The trend recorder defaults to auto triggering. When auto is selected for signal, triggering is not active. To use triggering, click on the triggering option located under the setup menu. Select the trigger signal from the drop-down box, and then enter a level in the trigger level box. Triggering on rising or falling edge can be selected with the edge triggering option. The single shot option, when checked, waits for the first trigger to occur, after which it then switches to auto triggering. Once set up, the triggering LED will blink when the triggering is active. While the trigger function is active, the trender always connects to the last 2 measured data points. So what that means is if data point 1 was measured at t minus 30 seconds and data point 2 was measured at t equal to 10 seconds, during a trigger event, both points will be connected. You can also record from the trender. Be aware of the camcorder icon because this is where you're going to record. After starting the trender, you will want to remember to click the camcorder icon to start the process. The recording file is saved as a DriveWizard Industrial trender file. Trending data can also be exported into a CSV datasheet for use with Microsoft Excel. The trender is a very powerful tool. Be aware that the sampling rate, or samples per second, depends on the communication method being used between the drive and the PC. Here are the sampling rates. Notice how with Ethernet and USB connections, the sampling rate remains fixed. 150 samples per second for Ethernet and 200 samples for USB. On the other side, if we look at serial connection, we start at 50 samples per second with one monitored signal, but it's going to decrease when we add more signals. This video shows how to use DriveWizard Industrial to control a Yaskawa drive. The drive control function is commonly used for jogging a drive or for testing operation. Drive control over DriveWizard Industrial is usually not used as a permanent control solution. First of all, to access drive control, you're going to want to click the Startup and Diagnostics tab, and then click the drive control icon. By default, you're going to get a warning message notifying you that you must confirm it is safe to run the drive and motor, along with some additional warnings to read through. Accept these conditions and the drive control window will pop up. Once the tool is open, controlling the drive is very intuitive. Start by clicking the On button. This button will turn on communication control. Clicking the Off button will turn off this communication control. When off is pressed, the program will turn back to the drive's previous sequence and reference before drive control was activated. So I'm talking about B101 and B102. After activating drive control, a speed reference can be dialed in with the knob or by typing in the speed reference below. Proceed selecting a direction by clicking the forward or the reverse button. The reset key can be used to reset faults, and it will always be active, even with the drive control function set to off. To stop the drive, click the stop button. You can also stop the drive by pressing stop on the drive's keypad. If communication is ever lost from, let's say, a loose connection, disconnected cable, the program will flash communication offline for the status. Stop operation by pressing stop on the drive's keypad, or if you have to, power off the drive. Here's a trick. By default, closing the drive control window does not stop the drive. Once again, to properly stop the drive, you're going to have to click the stop button, then the off button, and that'll turn off your communications control. However, in the options menu, you can make it so that closing the window will stop the drive and reset the reference back to 0. This video explains specifics on what you may need to know about databases and drive firmware associated with DriveWizard Industrial. DriveWizard Industrial is able to connect to a drive as long as its firmware is part of the installed database. After installing DriveWizard Industrial, you will have a standard database. The standard database will allow you to connect up to Yaskawa's industrial drive lineup. You can find a list of all the supported firmware of the installed database by going into the Options and selecting the Data tab. All of these numbers listed here, next to each drive series, is the flash ID. For 1000 series drives, the flash ID can be found on the drive on monitor U1-25. For older, 7th generation drives, check monitor U1-14. Use this number to verify which firmware the drive has. As long as the firmware displayed on your monitor is listed on the DriveWizard Industrial database, you should have no issue connecting. If you have a standard firmware that is not on this list, start by checking for an update under the Help tab. This button requires an internet connection to operate. It will search Yaskawa's server for any updates for DriveWizard Industrial. If we ever release a newer firmware, then DriveWizard Industrial's database will have to be updated to be compatible with the new firmware. To save time in the future, you can just select the box that says Check for Updates on Start. This way, DriveWizard Industrial will automatically notify you when an update is available. If your drive is running a custom firmware, you will need to update the database manually. If the firmware was downloaded through Yaskawa's partner login, the database file for DriveWizard Industrial is listed right next to the firmware download. Installation takes less than a minute. Once you have downloaded the database file, open it in DriveWizard Industrial. Click Yes to import the database, and then click Yes again to restart the program. You can now connect to your drive that has custom firmware on it. If your drive has firmware that is OEM specific, you will need to retrieve the database file from the OEM itself, and the installation procedure will be identical. This video explains how to utilize DriveWizard Industrial's application wizard as well as its Convert project tool. Under the Tools tab in DriveWizard Industrial, you will find the Application Wizard. The Application Wizard can be used to quickly configure your drive for a specific application. If you have changed any parameters in the project, when you click the Start button, you're going to get a message popping up asking if you would like to initialize the drive or not. Most of the time you will click Yes. This way you could start out on a nice clean slate. You can also select No to leave the drive's existing parameters alone. Using the wizard is a simple task. Instead of looking at a long list of parameters and numbers, the wizard breaks down setup into simple steps. Parameter settings have drop-down menus and also helpful descriptions. Additionally, there are some pretty nice graphics. This should give you a better understanding of what you may need to set a particular function to. Once you click through all the steps, you'll finally reach the end of the wizard. When you get to the end of the wizard, there is an option to write the parameters to the active project only, or to write the parameters to the project and to the drive. At this point, the wizard also is going to prompt you to perform an auto-tune. Auto-tuning is only an option and is not required. However, it is highly recommended in order to achieve the most torque per amp from the motor. Select which auto-tuning method you want to perform. Some auto-tuning methods will rotate the motor, and others are stationary and will not rotate the motor. Be aware of which auto-tuning method rotates the motor before just clicking through it. Auto-tuning will require you to enter in some basic motor information about the motor connected to the drive. Once this information is populated, click Next and then the Run button. Once the tune passes, the parameters will transfer over to the drive. Clicking the Transfer button will transfer all of the parameters to the active project. There is also a Convert Project tool available in DriveWizard Industrial. This tool can convert an older generation project file to the 1000 generation equivalent automatically. So now you can throw out that pen and paper because this tool makes it easy. The tool will automatically select a new model number based on what the old drive was. So be sure that the correct new drive is selected before converting the project. Click the Go button and the process will begin. At the end of the conversion, you can view a conversion log, which will list the parameters and settings that have been converted. After reviewing the log, transfer the parameters of the project, and all you have left to do is write the project file to the new drive. This video explains how to take advantage of DriveWizard Industrial's informative help file, customization options, and update features. The Help tab at the top of DriveWizard Industrial can be considered more helpful than most other software tools. Up here, you will find the Program Help file, which consists of an entire user's manual for everything in the software. Help is offered in easy-to-understand descriptions and handy visual aids to reinforce each topic. All topics are indexed in alphabetical order, and keywords can be searched in the Help menu. There is also drive documentation icons containing hot links to download the technical manuals for all supported drives. The Options icon contains a ton of customization settings and also lists the currently installed database. If you ever want to configure those pop-up windows and warning messages, this is where you do it. So for example, if you do not care about a drive and project file not matching up due to a kVA size mismatch, you can eliminate that nuisance message. Another helpful option is to have the hexadecimal communication address in the parameter overview window. You can also set DriveWizard Industrial to store the last known monitor and status panel signals. Also, in the options window, you can select if you would like DriveWizard Industrial to automatically check for updates on startup. If this is enabled, then DriveWizard Industrial will connect to Yaskawa's server to check if an update for the program is available. Of course, an internet connection is required for this function to properly work. If there are any issues with the auto update function, verify that it is not being blocked by a local firewall. Well, we've come to the end of this training program. but it is definitely not the end of our commitment to make Yaskawa drive and motion products the best in the industry. To us, quality means doing everything to make our customers, partners, and employees' experience a great one. We commit to that. We make it happen. We can, because to us, it's personal.